Congratulations, you've done it. You've completed the ISO 19650 certification readiness course. Let me tell you, it's no small feat. It's actually been an incredible journey. We've gone from understanding the gaps and diving in from trying to build a good foundation, filling all of those gaps, and you've built a lot of knowledge and confidence to make that audit process actually, hopefully, a breeze. You should be really proud of where you've come from and what you've achieved so far. So congratulations.
You made it.
Whoa! Yeah, congratulations. It's been an amazing journey. Now that you've completed the course, you will also get this certificate to show that you are ISO 19650 ready. And that will also give your auditor confidence that you followed a process and that maybe you'll actually have some fun on your audit rather than going through many non-conformances. So good luck on it, and be proud that you've gone through this process and that you are ISO 19650 ready. So this journey has been incredible because we have understood lots of different processes. Maybe you guys could help me and jump in with any answers that you have. What was your first impression when you first sort of saw the ISO 19650 audit process, and how has that changed as you've worked through this training and really helping educate others?
Well, maybe not only the audit process, but just learning about ISO 19650. That was very overwhelming for me. A couple of sleepless nights reading through the standard and understanding the standard. And as I worked myself more into it, I started understanding more, and so also the practical implementation of it. I think really a key point for me in this process is the checklist, because it really simplifies, and you just have to go through the checklist, and it makes it really simple to see what's covered already, what also still needs to be done. So I think that checklist is something that was a key for me to be more confident with this entire journey.
Very cool, very cool. And if somebody feels overwhelmed by the idea of an audit, what's one thing that you might tell them that might make them feel at ease?
First of all, they just don't worry about anything, because we have got them covered with all the information for them to implement the ISO 19650 standard and get ISO 19650 certificate with ease.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really just this two-step process, and audits can feel very scary, but if you break it down into step one is the checklist of things that you need to do, and step two is proving that you're doing those things. And really it's a case of not being scared about having somebody tell you maybe you could do it slightly better, and the opportunities that are presented from the non-conformances, that's really an opportunity for improvement. What about the most surprising thing that you've thought about as you discover this audit process? What's been the most surprising thing, something unexpected or something that you've seen as a highlight from that process?
Here, I just wanted to mention one thing. Like, as we mentioned earlier, it's a dream to audit the companies who have used Planoly to implement ISO 19650 compliance. And we made it really simple for them, even from the checklist and through the support.
So once you've identified gaps, how simple is it to fill them with the right tools and the right workflows?
Already we have lots of templates and knowledge base available for the gaps, and we are still improving our 60 days compliance program itself for them. Once the non-conformances arise, we just keep updating it to our knowledge base, so there won't be anything which we will be missed out. Even the ISO 19650 standard gets updated, everything will be updated in the 60 days compliance program.
That's really cool. Yeah, having support and knowing that everything's going to stay updated is a really good thing. How does the system break down? So we talked about 3 steps. Can you talk more about what those 3 steps are and how people can feel kind of in control of going through those steps?
Yeah, the first step is to perform what's so-called gap analysis to understand how far are you from being compliant with the standard. Once you, again, use the given resources, like the list that you have to go through, which is a simple process, then in the next step, you have time to cover those gaps and make sure that using the templates that are available, guidelines, resources, you can cover and fill those gaps to become ready for the audit. So in step 3, in the audit readiness step, you will be confident to go for that audit, book the audit, and go through the 2 stages of the audit process.
Yeah, very cool. When you think about the benefits of the ISO 19650 process and the certification, like the badge of honor, what do you see as the biggest benefits for teams that complete this ISO 19650 certification?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it quite a bit. I think the biggest benefit is that BIM is a great thing. Information management is awesome when we do or follow information management best practices. And ISO 19650 really gathers the learnings over the past 3 decades or so, since we are talking about the information management, or especially building information modeling. So when someone goes through this audit process, but also learning about ISO 19650, those teams can make sure that they are actually implementing the industry best practices, and that's a huge value, avoiding all those pitfalls and the dead ends that some other teams earlier had to go through. So that's of course a big benefit. Not to mention that working internationally, ISO 19650 is the badge that assures that teams are speaking the same language, regardless of their location, regardless of their background. Everyone will understand what the customer wants and how to meet those requirements and expectations.
Very cool. Yep. How do you think the teams feel once they've achieved certification?
I think it really gives them confidence. It's a team building exercise. So teams from our individuals and professionals from different departments will have to work together to complete the ISO 19650 audit and certification. And it's bounding them, it's a team building exercise, and in the end they will have a much higher confidence in their own processes. So they will implement these in projects and drive them to success.
I love that. I think that it is a big team building exercise. Yeah. When you think about gaining a certification for somebody personally, it's a big difference from gaining a certification for a company. And a company where it crosses different disciplines inside of the company, it crosses different stages in a project, the whole life cycle and that journey can be complex. So yeah, having the opportunity to smooth it through, everyone talk the same language, and to get certified. And I think that, yeah, there's a big confidence builder. But I love that point that you made. Yeah, it's team building for sure. Yep. What would you say to somebody that's still on the fence? Somebody that's starting to think about their ISO 19650 journey? What would you say to somebody that's still kind of debating whether they want to do it or not?
But after seeing the benefits, what ISO 19650 can bring to them, I feel they should start doing it. Even if they don't go for the certification process, at least they should try implement some of the major tasks in ISO 19650 so that they will start seeing the benefits, what it brings to them. Mm-hmm. Then they can just start building upon that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so standardizing processes and everyone understanding even just what the roles are and how to communicate and what an information requirement is, how to define it, how to contract for it, all of those different steps. Even if you went through the gap analysis and finding out where you're following and where you're not following might be a good idea, it might be a good place to start. So if you're still on the fence, why not go through a gap analysis and use the checklist and see how far you can get through that. It might be interesting. You'll actually be probably surprised. You've got a lot of these workflows and processes existing in your company, but maybe just called slightly different things. What's one part of the process that you think people think is scary, but actually turns out to be much easier than expected?
One thing I would like to highlight here is training their team to gain the knowledge of ISO 19650, but then we just made it simple with our expert level certification course. So everybody knows what to do. Why are we doing this?
That's a great point. Yeah. So one part is that it's a big education, because new standard or a standard that somebody is not following today can be a bit scary in itself. But if you are able to use training to build awareness throughout your company, that certainly makes it a lot easier. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for me, it's actually the audit is kind of like the most scary part, and it shouldn't be. It's actually quite interesting that there are some companies that we work with, some certification companies, that are sort of like a friend that comes along and sort of points out things. They're not prying in and saying really nasty things and telling you how badly you're doing. They actually want you to succeed, but they've got to go through a review process. So the audit itself is not actually that scary. It's just a process that you go through, and you might actually really enjoy working with your auditor, and it might be a very positive experience, as we have certainly found out with a lot of the auditors that we work with. How would you describe the auditor's role in that process? If you think about how they are sometimes really intimidating, or what people imagine that they're going to be intimidating, any ideas of how you might describe that role to companies that are thinking about going through an audit?
I guess there are different flavors of going through an audit. In the end, the quality of your certificate is going to be exactly the same, and it's up to you to select who you want to work with. So we heard about auditors who, it's really a friendly environment. They are like mentors or what's the word there?
Trusted friend. Was
Trusted
that right?
friends. That's a good one. Yeah, that help you guide through the entire process. And you mentioned it earlier. So they want you to be certified. So actually, they are going to give you the list of non-conformities, but that's part of the process. It has to be completed, and then it's going to be a dream to go through that audit.
Yeah. If we can make it a dream to get audited and a dream to go through the audit, then everyone will be a lot happier and not scared about audits. What's the best piece of advice that you can offer for preparing for an ISO 19650 audit without overcomplicating it? Any ideas, anything that might be practical or calming for teams?
First of all, just analyze your current practices and processes which you are doing. As mentioned before, many of the processes may not be in ISO 19650 terms, but you guys are actually doing it. So just focus on that and try to identify any gaps and then work on it. And we have got all the resources covered for you. And then audit preparation phase, it's just easy and doesn't have to be any more scarier. And for any non-conformances, you will get sufficient time frame to address those gaps, and we are here to support you.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely. Akosh, what's the best piece of advice that you can offer?
I guess you have to get in a rhythm of during this period to go through with the different team members and the different teams, the preparation and then the audit. So probably a structured approach, just like following our checklist, but then also a rhythm to communicate with the different team members. Probably that's where I would start.
Very cool. And then finally, in 3 words, how would you describe the audit process? They could be individual words or maybe 3 words together. And you can have 4 if you really need them. Cool, this is a tough question.
It is.
So I'll say structured, I'd say checklist, and I'll say more simple than you think.
Oh, that's a lot.
More simple than you think. That's 5, ouch. But I was saying that's 1. But yeah, what, any 3 words, throw out any words. What would you say how would you describe the audit process in a few concise words?
Address the gap.
If the decision is made, if you see the value in getting an ISO 19650 certification, if you want to follow this standard, then I think you just have to get started with it. And with the guidance, for example, the one that we are providing, and with the resources, tools, templates, and the checklist, of course, it's not 3 words at all.
Any final thoughts?
Get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Get started now. Yep, we're here to support you. We'll see you along the way. So enjoy the process. We'll be really celebrating with you. If you give us the opportunity to, we would love to celebrate with you.
Yeah,
cool.
Have fun.
Cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you.